going live in a couple of seconds here. So I'll wait just a moment for all that to happen, and we'll do some introductions. Here we go. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the joint meeting of the Creve Coeur and Maryland Heights Township Democratic Clubs. I want to thank everyone for attending this evening. I know there's a lot going on with the weather and other things, and appreciate your time and interest. I'm Harvey Ferdman. I'm president of the Maryland Heights Township Club. We also have Florence Pullen, who in a moment, who's the president of the Creve Coeur Township Club, and she'll be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance in just a moment. But first I want to say, if anybody is having any issues with needing a warm place or needing food or needing any kind of assistance, please reach out. You're welcome to reach out to me. I'm familiar with a lot of agencies around town and individuals and myself that can lend a hand if you need anything. So please don't be shy. Let's take care of each other at this time. And I know the next few days, a lot of people are going to be homebound and may need some assistance. So please, you're not alone. So moving on from that, I'd like to introduce Florence Pullen, who will be our I'm sorry.
lead us into the pledge.
She will read the Pledge of Allegiance, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and in just a moment here, as soon as I can find it, I will put that on the screen.
I need to get
That's
this.
what I was kind of stumbling over. Okay, and with that, Florence, if you were to lead us in the pledge, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening on this snowy day. Let's go into the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good to see you, Florence.
Good to see you too, Harvey, and the rest of you.
Okay, and with that, I would like to introduce our speakers for the evening. We have State Senator Jill Schupp, who has served in the House of Representatives and now in the State Senate. I think most people are familiar with Jill. And also we have Representative Doug Clemens, who's also the Democratic whip in the House. I don't think these folks need a lot of background introduction for everybody, so I'm just going to turn the program over to you two, and thank you for being here.
Well, oh, I think I'm on mute. No, can you hear me?
You're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So first I want to say thank you, Harvey and Florence. And Florence, no matter the weather, no matter what's going on, you always look so lovely. So it was great to see you. And thanks to all of you for being here. So many familiar faces, and it's good in the midst of a pandemic and a weather event to feel warmly hugged by so many people that I know and that I care about. So I'm glad to see you here tonight. I wanted to start, and Doug, I hope this is okay with you, but I wanted to just get you up to speed on where our numbers are in the Senate and the House this year. So in the Senate, of our 34 senators, we have 10 Democrats. Now, before the last election, we were also supposed to have 10 Democrats, but 2 of them got appointed to other positions. And so we had 8 Democrats in the Senate last year. And that additional 20% really makes a difference in terms of having, a big enough group to be able to work together and to try to make some impact, even though we are still part of a very small minority up against a supermajority of Republicans. But I will tell you, the freshman Democrats who have come in, and there are 5 of them, I can already tell you I'm so excited to be serving with them. They are a bright, focused, sort of fearless class of people who are willing to get up on what they care about. You know, the question always is getting to know them better over time and getting to understand what they care about. But you should feel good. We have a good class of 10 out of 34 this year, and it's great to be there. Before I turn it over to you, Doug, I also want to talk to you before, so I don't forget, and let you know that things are running a little bit differently. As some of you who were on earlier heard, we are off this week in the Senate because of the weather. So they've called the Senate for the week. We will not be going back in this week. But because of COVID, and the Senate has been open, but because of COVID, a lot of people who would normally come and testify in support or against bills are not coming up this year. And it is my recommendation to you from the Senate side that you don't need to come in person. This year, and only this year, you are being allowed to submit written testimony through a witness form that is available on the Senate website, which is senate.mo for mo.gov for gov. You can, as long as you have your testimony in an hour before a particular Senate hearing that you're testifying about, that counts. And we as legislators, even if we don't serve on the committee, we will know that you have supplied your testimony, and it will be provided to us in writing, and your name will appear on the witness list, which is not the same as usually the practice. So that's a big deal. Tell you one more thing, and then I'll ask Doug to cover these areas too. The COVID attitude in the Senate. So most of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle do not wear masks, regardless of whether, you know, where they are in terms of whether they've had COVID or a vaccine or two. But everything that I hear about that is, even if you've had COVID, even if you've had a vaccine, you still may be able to have that virus and shed it off and not get sick from it, but that means you can infect others. So over half of the people who are on the floor in the Senate are not wearing masks. They have made that choice. All of the people who work in the Senate and all of the Democrats are masked, as well as our staff. And I will say, from my perspective, that's because we care about making sure that we don't inadvertently give someone else the virus. So, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute or 2 or 3.
Well, thank you, Jill. As Jill said, it's wonderful to see everybody on this wonderful new thing. We've got Zoom meetings, of which I have several a day, it seems nowadays. Very much feels like old home, though, seeing all these familiar faces and names on the list. I am in Jeff City, unlike Jill. The Senate called for the week. The House is going day by day by day by day. So I know that we're not doing anything tomorrow, but it looks like Wednesday we may open for business. We'll have to see. Little disappointing for not having a committee this evening that I was really looking forward to. As you know, a good deal of us have been dealing with unemployment insurance overpayments. So I have a bill to statutorily fix that issue. I would prefer not to go that route because the statutory fix is complicated. We've got to go through committees in the Senate and be denied by the governor, because the governor is not doing what he could do and simply by a word and a signature on a piece of paper, allowing these overpayments to remain in Missourians' pockets. So that bill has got bipartisan support. We've got 9 people signed on to it, and we will be moving it through committee as soon as we get an opportunity to have a committee, weather allowing. There was a question in chat. There are 163 members of the Missouri House of Representatives. 47 of those are Democrats. We have our work cut out for us on the floor. We don't get to be lazy. We all work several committees. We all stand up and speak on the floor, because if we don't, nobody will. So that means that we have to stand up and do 3 people's work when we're in that room. We're happy to do it. As we move through this process of this session, there are a good number of things I'd like folks to keep their eye on. Education, or an assault on public education, seems to be the speaker's priority this year. I know the Senate has a different bill than what we're running. We're running several different bills, but basically a voucher type program called educational savings accounts, which would allow for tax exempt scholarships to be put through by large corporations to go through to private entities, expansion of charter schools, a revamp of how we accredit schools. So this would take the formula of accreditation completely out. And if you're in the bottom 10%, no matter how good you're scoring, you're going to be unaccredited. It's a very frightening prospect. And actually, we'll be debating that bill this week when we go into session. Of course, we have the COVID vaccine issue, which we've been on top of, trying to make sure that we actually get distribution to our urban areas. It's been a special committee hearing after special committee hearing, trying to get answers out of the executive branch in regard to where the vaccines are, why we're showing more than we have, how that's getting distributed to our public, why we're moving on to another tier when we haven't got the first tier satisfied. I do want to do a public service announcement right now for those of you in St. Louis County. Please call the County Board of Health or have your friends and neighbors do so if you do not have access to the internet. They have decided that the best way to get people signed up for the vaccine is the internet. That's no good if you can't afford internet, you're elderly, never decided to get internet. There are a number of folks that are qualified but not getting on the list for the vaccine because they don't have a way to. St. Louis County Board of Health has provided for you to contact by phone and get in on the list, and they will follow up with contact with your phone. Each county is handling it differently. So please advise your friends when you talk to them on the phone, meet them in the street, your neighbors, that sort of thing. Find out if they don't have internet to reach out via telephone in St. Louis County or inquire as to how to do it in their county. And then I guess we'll have a little bit more discussion here.
Right. And if I could go over a little bit more into some of the issues that Doug talked about too, from my perspective. First of all, I want you to know that we are working a lot behind the scenes to try to make some changes, including, and the one that Doug has been doing such a good job working so hard on, are these unemployment benefits. So I don't know if you know what has happened, but people, my office has been contacted by over 100 people in our district alone who have said, many of them are bus drivers, but they are not the only kinds of employees who have received unemployment benefits. Look, last March when we shut things down, when things were shut down because of COVID and people didn't know if or when they'd be going back to work, a lot of them called the Department of Labor and said, am I eligible for unemployment benefits? Here's my situation. And in every one of these cases, the Department of Labor said, yes, you are. Fill out these forms, which people did. They sent them in and they started receiving their unemployment checks. Then much more recently, the Department of Labor reached out and said, oh no, a mistake was made. And I've seen the forms that say, due to your error or omission, which is in none of these cases the case, but due to that error, you owe us now those unemployment checks that we've given you. Now imagine you're a family, you're a working person who is out of work, you've gotten that money, you've got to pay for your rent or your mortgage, you've got to pay for your food, you've got to pay for your gas and your electricity and your water and your sewer lines. And so people weren't sitting around stuffing these dollars in their back pockets. They were spending them, they were putting them right back into the economy to take care of themselves and their families. There are 36,000 Missourians who are now being told that the money they received from the Department of Labor after filling out the forms and going through the process, the Department of Labor is trying to claw it all back because it made an error. These are people who can't afford to pay back $8,000 or $4,000 or $12,000. So Doug is working on this through the legislative process through a bill. I have been working on it behind the scenes, trying to get the department to listen and the governor to do what he needs to do to release these funds and allow these people to move forward. If you can imagine now, not only do you know when or if you will be employed again, or if you are, but now you've got this bill hanging over your head. The federal government has said, we're forgiving those loans. We understand there was a problem and we don't expect these dollars back. So now we've got 36,000 Missourians who are waiting to hear whether or not they can go forward or they have to figure out how to pay off a debt. And these debts are typically, for some reason, they're in multiples of four, the ones I've heard about, $4,000, $8,000, $12,000. So it's a really big problem. If we can't find the solution without a legislative fix, then I'm really hopeful that Doug's bill in the House and we have bipartisan effort in the Senate to get this done. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it just may. Another issue that Doug talked about a bit that my office has been really working hard on is vaccine supply in St. Louis County. And I know that some of you on this call, on this Zoom event, or listening, are probably in that category of people that is eligible but has not been able to get a vaccine. And what we know, so my office has been in very close contact with the Department of Health and Senior Services in Jefferson City. And we have asked for numbers and we finally got them. But a week ago, 2 weeks ago, this coming Thursday, Senator Lauren Arthur from Kansas City and I did a Zoom event with the head of the Department of Health and Senior Services, Dr. Randall Williams, to try to get answers to our questions about COVID. And we had 20 questions and he knew what the questions were because I wasn't trying to play gotcha. We just wanted answers. And we got through about 4 of them because of him sort of beating around the bush and not really wanting to get to the crux of what we were trying to ask. But what we did find out was this: vaccines are supposed to be distributed proportionately around the state. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I think it's interesting that the state is divided for the purposes of distribution into 9 regions. Those 9 regions are based on highway patrol regions. Highway patrol regions have nothing to do with population. So we have regions with big population like ours, and we have regions with very, very few people. And it seems like those regions are all getting sort of the same amount of vaccines, which is not at all proportionate. So we've taken those numbers, we've looked at them by county, we've divided them, we've seen where things are going. As some of you know who might have driven to Farmington or to Washington County to try to get your vaccine, they're not even being sent to the center, to the population centers of the regions. We've been fighting this, and I think that we're finally, and we aren't the only ones. Representative Tracy McCreary, who I think is on the call, she and I had a Zoom meeting this past Thursday with Acting Director Spring Schmidt from St. Louis County Department of Health to talk through questions around the virus and when things are coming in. Now it looks as if St. Louis is going to be treated, St. Louis County and I hope City are going to be treated in a proportionate way and hopefully make up for some of the lack of viruses we've gotten in the past. So as Doug has mentioned to you, either go online and sign up or call in if you need to do that. I have a couple of places that you can register. So if you need those, I'll ask you to, I can put them out in the chat. But please make sure that you're registered and make sure that if you do get the vaccine and someone else calls you, you don't take two appointments. We want to make sure as many people can get registered and get the vaccine in their arms as possible. Doug also mentioned the anti-public education legislation that is moving forward. So in the Senate, it's Senate Bill 55 and a bunch of other bills that have all been put together into one great big, in my view, anti-public education bill. The chairman of the Education Committee, Senator Cindy O'Laughlin, has been out. She's been very sick for a while now. And now we won't be, and she wasn't supposed to come back this week either. She has an upper respiratory infection of some sort. That's all I understand. So you can figure that what that might mean on your own. But these bills expand charters. They put into place these educational savings accounts that Doug talked about, which are actually vouchers and frankly an end run around the Constitution to allow somebody to put in a lot of money, get 100% tax credit back, 100%. So in other words, they are 100% diverting your tax dollars so that a student can go to a private or parochial or another public school if they choose. We also have an expansion of voucher programs. These are, in my view, not the ways to help kids get a quality education. The data that we've seen does not demonstrate that these programs are any better than the programs that we have. And quite frankly, the things that I've seen demonstrate to me that the people who are, the children who are struggling the most in their schools, are the schools that are struggling the most are in many low income areas. They're poverty-stricken areas where kids are coming to school with problems well beyond not knowing math or language arts. They're coming in with problems of hunger, of sometimes an inability of a parent to pay the mortgage. Sometimes they're coming from a neighborhood where shots are fired and there's all kinds of trauma. What we need to do, in my opinion, with our dollars is to make sure that we are meeting children where they are and trying to help them move forward. There are some really good ways we can do that, and I've been working on different kinds of legislation over the years, some of which has passed, to try to help our kids move forward. These proposals, in my view, absolutely take away our public education resources and make it harder in all of our schools, especially those that depend upon state dollars, to have what they need to adequately educate our kids. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of more bills that I think are bad bills, and then maybe we'll talk about a few good ones. One of the ones is Senate Bill 12, and it's a lot of other bills glommed onto that. As a matter of fact, I just for fun one day added up all the numbers, and it adds to 275, but that's just the bill numbers. It has nothing to do with anything other than there are a lot of bill numbers when you start from numbers like 12 and it adds up to $275. This bill removes local control for public health protections. So on the Senate floor, when we discussed this bill, which after hours of discussion was finally laid over, which means it can come back, but for now it's off the floor. As you may recall, when it became clear to us that we had this pandemic in the United States and in the state of Missouri, the governor said he is going to leave it up to our local community leaders to make the rules and put into place the measures that need to be put into place to make sure we keep the people in our communities safe. Now that that has happened, there are people who stood up on the floor who don't live in St. Louis County, who have done nothing but criticize Sam Page. And these are tough jobs. And look, I don't love everything Sam Page does, but he's been put in a position where he has to make some decisions to see what we should do with our businesses and our schools. He hasn't closed our schools, but that has been up to our school boards and superintendents. And Kevin, we can have a conversation about that. But he has done what he thinks we need to do, listening to the science, listening to the researchers and the data to try to keep our community safe from the expanding of COVID. This bill takes away his ability and every other local leader's ability to do what they need to do. It strips local control and it sends control back to the state. And as you know, the state has not wanted to deal with this because, quite frankly, in a less populated area, rules may be able to be, or measures may be able to be different than they are in a place like St. Louis County. So those are, let me talk about one more. Bill Eigel, Senator Bill Eigel from St. Charles, Senate Bill 26, which for peaceable assembly, so for protests, if you protest on a roadway or a highway and block that road, this will pretty much raises and increases the fines, hauls you off to jail, and also provides expanded protections for members of our police department. So I'm just starting to get into that bill. As a matter of fact, a lobbyist for the St. Louis County Police called me today to talk it through, and we're going to have another discussion about it tomorrow. But these are some of the things that are going through the process that I think at the end of the day end up taking away your rights or taking away measures that help us stay safe and healthy, even in a pandemic. Doug?
Jill, I wanted to jump in and just say our Seventh Amendment rights are once again under assault. We hear a lot of conversation about our First and Second Amendment rights, but I want to remind everybody your Seventh Amendment guarantees you your day in court if you've been wronged. And what has happened repeatedly, session after session after session, and is happening again this year, is basically giving people a way out of jail. So right now it's COVID liability. So businesses can't be sued for any negligence that occurs during the time of COVID. Well, if they were negligent, they deserve to be sued. And it's not the legislature who gets to decide whether there was a guilty party or not. It's the courts. It's a full separate branch of the government that we have set aside to decide whether a lawsuit is frivolous or not, and to decide guilt, innocence, and penalty. That's the court's job, and the legislature needs to stay out of it. I actually have a bill. We had a bill just passed the House called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, an atrocious piece of legislation which would actually gut our police ability to enforce firearms laws in the state of Missouri, and doing a lot of other negative things. But I mirrored that with an actual bill that is worded in a way that would pass constitutional muster and do a good job. It will go nowhere, but it's called the Seventh Amendment Preservation Act. It's House Bill 1116. I'm pretty proud of it.
Great.
I also wanted to, real quick, I wanted to respond to, there was a question in the chat a little while back. Let me go back here real quick. Yeah, on the media, the mistake in the unemployment insurance overpayment. So we had a full House investigatory committee with the Director of Labor and other representatives there. Basically 3 hours of Q&A. These are actually simple errors, believe it or not. By statute and by regulation, they can do no more than 10% accidental overpayments. The question here was actually one of volume. Normally, we do about $230 million in unemployment insurance payouts in a year. We actually did $5 billion this year. So that 3% error of overpayments, it was 3%, winds up being a hefty sum of money. That's $150 million we're asking Missourians to pay back through no fault of their own. They filled out the paperwork correctly. They were given the payments. And it took so long for the Department of Labor to catch up on their mistake that weeks after weeks after weeks of overpayment went by. I have constituents that owe as much as $11,000. And now I'll turn it back over.
Somebody asked in the chat what the education bill number is. It starts with Senate Bill 55. And Andy Laughlin is the lead sponsor, but you have to look at the bill, the revised bill, because it has all of the additional the bills that were all put together on that bill. I'm going to try to go back to the chat. Well, let's open it up to live questions. While instead of you all sitting here, let's give you a chance to throw in your 2 cents and ask your questions, if that's okay.
Well, I'm more than happy to kick that off. I heard that the education tax break bill is only for failed school districts. In other words, the funds can only be used for students that live in failed school districts. Is that the case? And in that case, does it have some merit?
I'm trying to think, because I've read so many different versions. I don't think that is true, but I think but I could be wrong. I don't recall that being part of it. The reality is, what we want to do is we want to improve the education of our kids, especially in those failed school districts. We want to make sure that we're moving them forward. But the other reality is, well, it just depends. It depends on the bill, and it depends how it goes through the process. I will tell you that if this was all about helping families in need who are in failing school districts, I'd be the first one to sign on. That isn't what these bills are designed to do. So Doug, I don't know if you've read that.
Well, yeah, I have. So the House bill, Krista Finelli is carrying that one. The House bill actually basically opens up these abilities to move money between corporations and private entities and get it, as you said, Jill, a full tax credit for the monies moved. It does not matter the condition of the public school the public school district's performance, or whether it's a failing district or not. Basically, this is a shuffle play so that people are not paying taxes on their money. There are a couple other education disassembly bills that are out there right now that concern me greatly. There's a proposal for a statewide, this is a great one, property tax, as if we need more property taxes. That seems to be the one lever that people can play with in the state. An increase in property tax at a county level that would allow those funds to be generated to pay for early childhood education. And actually, I was sitting in on a committee that happened to pop up, and my simple question is, if we're going to raise more revenue, can we give it to DESE with an earmark for early childhood education? And not a clear answer for that one. But of course, they want private entities to get in on the money raised through those increases to property taxes. But right now, we're seeing an assault at the funding of our public schools. And we all need to be very concerned about that. They changed the funding formula 3 years ago, so that the funding formula actually winds up being less. So now they're trying to undermine that. We don't fully fund education transportation. We actually fund to 17%. We patted ourselves on the back for moving from 16 to 17% on that. And then during COVID, the governor came and wiped out that extra percentage point because we needed the money. Yet he still didn't spend our federal dollars that were coming into the state. I have a lot of questions about our priorities, but education needs to be amongst them. This is a staple. I believe that I work for the people. I believe that my job is to support public education. Private institutions should be competitive and need to look out for themselves. That's my stand on it, and it will continue to be.
Can
We have
I
a
ask
question in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Marilyn.
I just wanted to ask for a clarification. First of all, if you're talking about a tax credit, that doesn't mean they're reducing your income and then the tax on it. They're just taking it straight off your tax. And were you saying that individuals can have a savings account in which they put that money and then spend it on their own children?
So right now, the state of Missouri already changed the 529 laws so that you can have a savings account that's tax-free for your child's education, be that college or K-12. So you can already do a savings account. This adds corporations into the mix.
I see.
Corporations and large donors who get, again, they divert our taxpayer dollars to the programs they want. I mean, that's what tax credits do, right? But they give 100% back to the person who did that. So yeah, kids would have to apply for these education savings account scholarships. And I don't believe they're means tested, which I think is where Harvey was going.
Yeah, that's
right. And so, you know, a lot of us are in Parkway schools, Ladue schools. Imagine, so, you know, my kids went to Ladue schools, so I'm more familiar with that district. But I know we have Parkway school board member on the call, or at least we did. A lot of the kids in my district go to private and parochial schools. As long as they spend a semester in the public school, then they can use these educational savings account dollars to offset or to pay for their private or parochial school education.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question about how much money will the voucher programs take away from the public school funding? I mean, you know, is it just that there'll be less money in the budget for Missouri to use, or when they put these vouchers in, does it take away money from the public schools?
It does. Well, so it's interesting. It's just sort of an accounting trick because the Constitution doesn't allow us to invest public dollars in religious education. So that's why they go through this tax credit program. But I believe that the maximum written in the bill right now is $50 million of money that would be diverted for that particular program, just for that one program. And again, all those things can change as we begin to negotiate these things on the floor. And what Doug briefly mentioned before, and what I will add to, is Doug said, you know, the House, the Speaker, the leaders in the House want to make sure that there is some kind of education reform. So do the leaders in the Senate. They've said it's their #1 priority. And as you recall, and Doug mentioned, it wasn't that long ago that we lopped $450 million off the Education Foundation formula. And now we're able to say by spending $450 million less that we fully funded the formula. That's what came as a result of that. But also we put into place virtual schools. So now kids can take virtual classes or can take their entire education online and their school district pays for it. We've already done reform. We've seen what's happened with charter schools. They haven't done any better as a whole than our public school system. We can do better, and I believe that there are ways to do better, but I don't believe that these ways are even designed, quite frankly, and maybe I'm a cynic, but I don't see them as being designed with the best interests of our children and their education in mind.
We have a question in the chat from Diana and Dick Fine. A lot of these bills will negatively impact Republicans as much as Democrats. Is there a way that we can do a better job of getting the word out about all of the damage these bills will cause?
Well, and Doug, do you want to go? I'm happy to go first.
I just wanted to say that school districts, to me, are a hub and a center of the community. And one of the things that folks in our area don't necessarily see so much is that can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great, because I just got a warning that my earbuds are dying. So, one of the things that we don't see so much is in rural areas, the school district is the center for the community. And all of these bills will hurt any public school district. That includes rural districts along with urban and suburban districts. Our rural legislators in the House are very well aware of this, and they are having problems getting the votes. If you know folks in outstate Missouri, it's not a bad idea to have them call their elected official and give them a pat on the back and encourage them to stand against this stuff and save their school district.
Right. I agree with Doug 100%. And we have Republicans and Democrats in the Senate who are very much pro-public education and are going to stand alongside people like me and be up and protest for these. But here's another interesting piece of how some of these bills are written. They are written to exclude small districts. They are written to only include districts in communities with a certain population number. So that's how they get around keeping, the rural people where their school districts are, as Doug said, the hubs of the community, keeping them from being upset because you know what? It's not going to impact them.
Thank you.
Well, interestingly enough, Francis Howell will probably be one of the earliest targets for charter school expansion.
This is Ruth. What kind of arguments would be, meaningful or somewhat persuasive for people who are sending this kind of legislation forward? I mean, I'm a real advocate of education, so.
So, you know what, Ruth, I think that's a great question. And I think that, the arguments that, so the Missouri School Boards Association, MSBA, actually, I think has some information up on their website that goes through the bill and can give you the information about what the problem areas are. But I also want to say to those of you who may not get into the weeds on the policy, but want to make sure that you're supporting public education and not diverting funds from it, that I don't want to be cynical here, but I don't know how many of the legislators who receive your phone call or your letter are going to say, well, Ruth really understands this issue, so I'm with her. I think that sometimes it's a numbers game, and reaching out and saying, and just saying, I don't support this. I am a proponent of public education. Please don't divert our dollars elsewhere is good enough. I think that the important part is, and Doug said it earlier, that we have people from all over the state reaching out to their legislators because we pay attention, all of us that are elected, pay attention to what our constituents care about. So if you have a cousin or a friend in another part of the state that can write to their senator and their House member, I think that that's a really good thing to do. And you can get good information, I think, from MSBA, from the Missouri NEA, MNEA, that's the Missouri National Education Association. You can also call my office and we can talk it through and talk to you about the specifics with regard to the bill. I think any of your legislators would be happy to do that. There are so many pieces in this bill, and I also think if you hone in on one piece and that piece is gone, there's Nancy Copenhaver to everybody. So MissouriNEA.org is the website. I think those are really good places to learn and to study these bills. Also, I hope that you know that you can read these bills online. So Senate Bill 55, Cindy O'Loughlin's bill, if you can go in various ways, get to it, but senate.mo.gov or dougshouse.mo.gov, and it gives you a menu, and you go either to the bills, so legislation, and you can look it up by number if you know the number. You can also go to the legislator if you know who the sponsor is of the bill, and look it up that way and scroll through that sponsor's list of sponsored bills. And you can also look it up by topic. So if you ever have questions about how to utilize that information online, please call my office. If you call us this week, well, actually, I think my staff is in there, but we will get your call, even if it's this week, and we'll get back to you, or your email, and we'll get back to you and let you know, walk you through the steps.
And just to tack on to what Jill said, I know that this group is pretty active, but I want to push, and I always push, please reach out to your elected officials. Have a coffee with me, have a coffee with your city council members, have a coffee with your school board members. It's important that you actually know us, reach out to us, that we know who you are. And the power that you can get from a conversation with an elected official is immense. And I really want to push folks to interact with us. If we're not doing a good job, let us know. If we're doing a great job, please let us know. But the point is, it's better for us to know our constituents and actually know who you are, what you do as a hobby, what are the things you think are important for our community. And we can't guess at it. And it's very important that you interact with us, and please do. Please call my office anytime, email me anytime. We're happy to interact.
And I just want to mention, I see Keisha Lee, who is another school board member, is on here, and she gave you the Missouri School Boards Association website, MOSBA.org. So Missouri SBA. Thank you, Keisha, for pointing that out, because that's not how I spelled it out. I think if you put MSBA, you'll get Michigan State, something like that. So thank you. Firearm nullification bill, somebody wrote about that. And yeah, this nullifies, I don't even know if this can be done, but it would nullify all federal laws, excuse me, around firearms in the state of Missouri. So I think sometimes these things are just put up to show where somebody stands. I'm hopeful that's the only reason.
And there was just a question popped up in chat about, is it beneficial to talk to other committee members of a committee other than our elected official? And I would have to say that varies by elected official. There are some legislators who are happy to listen to everybody, some that only want to listen to their constituents. When it comes to a committee, however, as Jill said, we can take witness testimony due to COVID in the House also, the same way the Senate can. Please deliver an official testimony if you have an opinion. It goes into the record and people actually get around to reading them. That again depends on the ethics of the elected official, but most of us read them.
I also put a link up for fastdemocracy.com, and I really strongly recommend people use that. It was developed actually by someone here in this area for his wife who works with the Missouri ACLU to be able to track the Missouri bills a little bit easier, and it is now spread to covering all 50 states, and it's getting national recognition. It's free for use by individuals, And a good example of why you should use it is if abortion rights are your issue, then you can go in there and ask it to give you any legislation in Missouri about abortion rights. Normally you would look under health bills and things like that. Well, it turns out that there's a bill under transportation that makes it illegal to, proposes to make it illegal to transport someone across the Missouri border in order to get an abortion. And that never would have shown up in a normal search, because you normally would not look under transportation bills for something that has to do with abortions. So I strongly recommend that you look at fastdemocracy.com. Back to the questions.
What is it again, Harvey?
I put it in the chat. Fast,
Oh,
F-A-S-T,
okay.
democracy.com, one big
Okay.
word.
Thank you.
It's a good resource.
Yes.
Yeah, we may
I
run a seminar on that in the future on how to use it. I'll see if I know the authors. I'll see if I can get them for a
Right.
future meeting.
Yes, we do too. So I'm sure that I think they'd probably love to come and speak.
I saw a question about video testimony, and this is a real big thing right now. And also the comment in that question was that some of the people opposed to policies that we might like and supportive of policies that we think are destructive actually show up to committee hearings where a lot of folks on our side don't think it's safe. I will tell you, it's probably not safe. Much like Jill said, more than half of the legislature goes around without masks on. Jefferson City has no rules in place to stifle the spread of this virus. Committee hearings are cramped. People are close together, and 3/4 of the room doesn't have a mask on. So video testimony becomes a big deal, and we addressed it in the rules of the House at the beginning of the year, and Jill's going to speak to the Senate side on this, I'm sure. We addressed it in the rules of the House. Our decision in the rules are that the committee chairs are permitted to take video testimony, but the loophole is that there has to be an application for video testimony submission 1 week before the hearing. And a lot of times we get 2 or 3 days notice on a hearing. So that makes it impossible to actually apply for video testimony. This is incredibly frustrating. Please feel free to write committee chairs of committees of topics that you're interested in and kind of push them. But beyond that, the rules of the House are there for the session. That's 2 years, and those are the ones we will follow. And the Senate side, what are you guys doing?
So I asked for this and pushed for this, and I was just told, no, it's just not going to happen in the Senate. So we are not going to do it. We are not equipped to do that. You know, on the Senate side, you have to understand, we don't even have computers on our desks on the Senate floor. As a matter of fact, we're not allowed to. So yeah, we are not moving forward with video testimony. And to me, it would be such a great service to our constituents, and give us the opportunity, unlike with your written testimony, give us the opportunity as senators to ask you questions so that we really understand what you're trying to say, or to whether it's to make sure we clearly heard you, or even to challenge some of the premises that you might be testifying on. So we don't have that opportunity, but I would suggest, and as I say to people in my email responses to them, I never think it hurts to send your email or your testimony to the members of the committee who are hearing your bill. The closer it is to even if you don't make it in time for the witness testimony, the closer it is to that bill being heard, because it's usually heard 1 week and then voted on the next at the generally, not always, but generally. So if you can get testimony in and those people or their staff can read that testimony, maybe somebody else now has heard your voice. And I think that, that's all we can do, is utilize our voices and utilize the power that we have of our convictions to inform and hopefully have somebody listen.
And I want to tack onto that, because you're absolutely right. And just the process of looking at a bill online through house.mo.gov or senate.mo.gov, it will tell you what has happened to the bill. When a bill has been referred to a committee, It may be 4 weeks for a committee hearing. It may be 2 days for a committee hearing. But once it hits that committee, it's not too early to start submitting your opinions to committee members. So it gets you jump on the ball, and also gets you gets them a feeling for how this is going to go when they take testimony on it.
Was there a question earlier in the chat about the vaccine and about signing someone else up? Was that, did I? Yes?
There was.
That was my question, Jill. I have an 88-year-old mother-in-law, and I've been trying to sign her up since she has no internet access. I just want to make sure that if I do that, it comes to the same address as when I registered for whatever website.
Yeah, you know, I went through those websites just to see how complicated they were and what they looked like. I will tell you that I would make a phone call just to ensure. I mean, it should just come back to the same email address that sent it. But I would make sure that if you sign up 2 different names through one email address, I would think that should be fine. But there are so many glitches in some of these programs because they're new and weren't anticipated that I would just double check and give a call.
Yeah, she does live in her own home and all that, but still, in order for us to have normal visits with her, we're always masked, we're always doing the COVID precautions with her. And so it'd be nice if we get her vaccinated.
Yes, it would. I think it would make you feel better. And I will just, when Representative McCreary and I had our Zoom event last Thursday with Spring Schmidt from the St. Louis County Department of Health, the question was asked, after you've been vaccinated, should you continue to wear a mask?
Yes.
Or after you've had COVID? And the answer, okay, you're all shaking your head. So the answer is yes, clearly. You can still, we don't know if you can still be a carrier. So you want to make sure you're doing everything you can when you're around people other than the immediate people that you live with every day, that you're keeping everybody safe.
Thank you.
I will.
Go ahead, Doug.
I would just wanted to say that it is possible to do multiple folks through your email address to help folks. The way I became aware that there were so many people, a digital discrepancy of folks that couldn't sign up online because they had no internet, is 2 independent folks working on either side of my district working to sign up elders in their neighborhood. And they happened to be posting about it on Facebook. They didn't even reach out to me in my office. So it is possible to do it. I know one person's handling 22 people right now in their neighborhood. But you know, if at all possible to have direct contact with the patient and St. Louis County Health would be a great idea.
I have several things I'd like to say. I don't have a lot of knowledge, but so I have a horror story about getting signed up. I worked for a long time before there was a plan, and if I had any sense, I would have just relaxed and waited, but I didn't. So I finally got signed up and actually got a vaccination on the 2nd day of the program through BJC Barnes, down close to, well, it's west of Kings Highway. So I'm going for my 2nd one Friday, but I tell you, those programs, like you said, Doug, are wild. You know, I am not a beginner on the internet. I'm not very wise about it, but it was just very, very hard. I had to have my daughter help me, and I won't go on with stories about that. So that's one item. I can attest that I really made an awful lot of phone calls and used the internet. Just was a horror story. I received a phone call about the middle of last week from a group called something like, it was unsolicited by me. It wasn't too awful long, and it was the Coalition of Public School Options. Do you know that group? Anybody?
Sounds to me like a charter school group, but
Yeah, I think
I
it
don't
is.
know them.
And virtual school was talked about. And Phil, you mentioned his name before. I don't know what it really is, but I've got something. Christinelli, yeah, something like that.
Finelli, yeah.
Was part of this. And I have bill number HB 754 written down, but it was very disturbing to me. I'm definitely public school advocate. I taught for 30 plus years. And it was really a complaint session. And people talking as if they knew all about what, Jill, you would appreciate this, about what the schools needed and how territorial items were being, that's what people were talking about, the public school people. They just wanted to protect their territory. So I wasn't impressed with it. They ended up, it was less than a half an hour, and this woman spoke about her particular case, and it was all not very broadly based as solutions, like you said before. And then they ended up asking for people to call them if they, it was kind of like stirring up people. Well, I didn't get in on, I didn't even try to get in, but I left a message for them. They said, leave a message, and invited Mr. What's his name to call me if he wanted to discuss it. I tried not to be too revealing of what my stance was, but yeah, I guess that's essentially what I wanted to say. I wanted to know if you knew that. Is there a lot of that going on? It sounded to me like there probably was a lot of
Yes, there
stirring
is.
people up. Yeah.
So there are two organizations. Well, there are probably more than that, but We Power and Opportunity Trust are organizations that are out there pushing these things. They are actively recruiting people who have a horror story about public education. They're taking them in, they're teaching them how to give committee testimony. In a lot of cases, they're hiring them as employees to travel around and talk bad about public education. This is a very real thing, and they are soliciting for stories. And it sounds to me like that was what their attempt was. If you've had a bad experience, give us a call and share your story. They'll be happy to have it. This is the type of thing that we're faced with in trying to fight this type of legislation coming up. Is this AstroTurf room full of parents that are concerned about education telling horror stories, and actually a lot of them are on the payroll of the companies pushing for these ESAs and charter expansion.
We have two folks with their hands raised, but I just want to take this as a segue, as an opportunity. One of the ways that we're fighting back against all this stuff is through the Democratic Legislative Network Monday night calls. Unfortunately, tonight was a conflict, but the other 3 nights of the month, I encourage everyone to participate in these calls. They generally have a call to action. They generally have things you can do to help influence legislation. They're run by Peter Meredith out of the House. And if you look at the email you got announcing tonight's meeting, the link to sign up for that newsletter and then the phone call information is at the very top of the invitation for tonight's meeting. With that, I want to ask Don, you had your hand raised. Do you still have a question?
Yes, I do. And thank you for all the hard work you're doing during these incredibly challenging times. The observation I would like to make, that's a bit of a question at the same time, is, and I spent a lot of time with Sue Allen and David Wood over the last 6 years, okay? And my takeaway from that experience is that there's such a huge disconnect between, the legislature's embrace of, I guess it's Article 2, the general welfare of the state, and the whole process of governing. It's difficult to listen to all the minutia when the big issues are being pushed to the side for all the reasons that you've talked about tonight. And I'm searching for, or thinking, we've got to figure out a way to turn the stampede, because from a business perspective, which is where I really, try to make a living, Missouri's a train wreck, okay? And I don't want to move. So as a party, it seems to me we have to look at developing some sort of scorecard system that we can communicate to the public with to make them understand they're being cheated by this whole process. And I grew up in rural America, so I think that, you know, we have to be able to address, we have to be able to connect with them as well. Any thoughts?
Good idea.
A lot of thoughts about that one. So I have a certain belief in government's responsibility and governance, and we don't do a very good job of governance. First and foremost, we should pay our bills and move on from there. When we look at Missouri as a business-friendly state, somehow legislators have in their brain that if we do tax cuts, tax credits, tax, well, Missouri is just fine when it comes to corporate tax. As a person who's run multi-million-dollar facilities in multiple states throughout the Midwest, I can tell you that setting up a new facility in the state of Missouri isn't appealing. The reason it's not appealing is because of our educational system. The reason it's not appealing is because of our lack of infrastructure. These are the things I'm looking for when I'm looking to set up a business. And instead, we're flapping around about the Second Amendment. That isn't good for our economy. That isn't good for businesses or business attraction. We haven't dealt with Medicaid expansion, which we, the voters, finally had to do it ourselves because our legislature wouldn't do it. Guess what? That's important to an employer who's paying outrageous costs to cover their employees in insurance. So yes, there's a whole laundry list of things to talk about, including the Right to Farm Act back in, I think, 2013, 2014, where we pretty much killed the Missouri farmer and opened up our doors to Chinese farms coming in, these corporate giant monstrosities. All these little things are done to us, but we don't pay attention to the lack of governance. If we were paying attention to governance, if we're paying our bills, fixing our bridges, fixing our roads, building our infrastructure, these things wouldn't have happened to us. So it's a question of priorities and a question of where you stand on that spectrum. And we need to do a better job of advertising that as Democrats. Just getting back to business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was such a great answer, Doug. And I'm just gonna add a couple of things to that. So, you know, we do need leadership that says, what do we want to look like in 10 and 20 and 30 years from now? What do we want the state to be? And how do we attract and retain the young people that I think, you know, with the exception of Kevin Seltzer, who's on this call, we're losing them to I'm just kidding because he's related to me. We're losing these young people to other states and other places that are much more lifestyle friendly. You know, young people want a place that they think is family friendly, a place that supports the things that they care about. Businesses want educated, thoughtful employees and entrepreneurs and people who can figure out how to problem solve. They want, as Doug said, infrastructure issues resolved. There is no such thing, really, forgive me, as public transportation here. And yet, you know, I have a kid in Chicago who doesn't even have to have a car. And that's a great way to live, is to be able to get around conveniently and easily. There are so many changes. And when we have a legislature that, quite frankly, is short-sighted, and I think politicians tend to be short-sighted in general, but when you have term limits, what you've done is created a legislature that is there for this amount of time and then gone, and then the new person comes in and starts from the beginning. Think about it. If you had a company and you had an employee who worked there 8 years, finally figured out what the heck they were doing and got good at their job, would that be the day you said, you're fired? No, of course not. We don't take long-term looks because we're not here for the long term. We need somebody leading this state who is looking to the long term and saying, what do we need to put into place to move us forward? And those are the kinds of things we're ignoring. So, you know, tax cuts, easy, right? focusing on, as Doug said, these smaller, well, I don't know. I don't see, I think, you know, knowing that there are guns in our community and that's how we're going to resolve our problems, this proliferation of no rules when it comes to guns. I mean, we're spending our time on things that don't bring us a future. Our heads are right in this moment and not looking to what might be and what can be and who we want to be when we grow up. So in terms of the question about the scorecard, I don't know how to resolve that question, but I will tell you there are people like me who are saying, what do we do to get the message out and to not be, you know, even putting into place a new party leader every 2 years. I mean, we keep starting from scratch every 2 years. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been in this business doing these things with a view, the long view, for a long time now, for decades. It takes that long. It takes that long to really make change. And we have to know what that change is supposed to look like. So sorry, I could go on and on about this, but there are people who are trying to look to the future and say, who do we need to be? Who do we want to be for the next generation coming up behind us? So those young people like Kevin on this call, you know,
Kevin is,
we need you to get involved. Yeah. And I know you are. You've run for office and you have a young family. So you will be looking to the future. Some of us, even on the other side of that, want to help.
That raises a lot of questions, but we still have another hand raised. Cheryl Hibbler, do you still have a question? Would you like the floor?
Cheryl, where is she?
No, I'm sorry. That was an accident.
Okay. Well,
This is my
add-on
first
to
time on
everything-
a cell phone.
Okay. Well, my add-on to everything that you just said, Jill, I guess I have an add-on question to that, and that's term limits. Is there any possibility of getting rid of term limits so that we can keep our folks who have a lot of wisdom in our government?
So for several years, since we know we can serve 8 years in the Senate and 8 years in the House, so for several years, I filed a bill and many other people did that said instead of 8 years in each chamber, let's say 16 years total, you figure out where you serve. So if you want to serve all 16 in the House, you know, after about that 8, 9, 10, you become pretty good at what you're doing. If you want to serve 4 in the House and 12 in the Senate, you know, I think that's one way because term limits are very popular with the public because they say, we want that bad guy out. Oh, not my legislator, but the bad one. We want her or him out. There is a bill, I think, that's moving through the process now that is, I believe, that is 12 years in either chamber. It's a move in the right direction. If we could get people to understand that it's really not about the legislator. Trust me, in 2 years when I'm done. But it's about you. It's about somebody being there for the long haul for the people who aren't running for office, but who need somebody to serve on their behalf. So yeah, I think that we need to start talking about that piece of this big picture with our neighbors and with friends because term limits poll so well among people who frankly aren't paying a lot of attention.
I always cleverly say we have term limits. It's called an election.
Very clever. We have one more question in the chat. It has to do with TIFs and I guess the feeling that TIFs divert school funding and are the school boards involved when decisions on TIFs are made?
So I happened to, so the last time I looked at that TIF statute, I think that there are 11 or 12 members of a TIF commission, and 2 of those are school board members. So yes, they have representation, but it's certainly not, never even close to a majority. There are, different schools of thought on TIFs, and I actually am not totally against them. TIF is tax increment financing. So when a developer goes into an area and wants to build something, they can ask the community to give them a TIF. So, which means that the community will not charge them the taxes for a certain amount of time until they have their building established or paid off. And that can be 100% TIF, which means we don't pay any taxes to the local district, or it could be 50% TIF, or it could gradually go down over time or up over time, I suppose. So TIFs, in my view, have been absolutely misused. When we have TIFs in communities like Creve Coeur and Ladue and Frontenac and Olivet and, these West County wealthy communities where a developer can come in and make her or his money and do just fine without somebody financing it and giving them a tax break, I think that is an abuse of a TIF. But in some communities, in North City, where we want to build things and we want to grow and develop a community where people are not going for a variety of reasons, but we want to create jobs in that community. Sometimes I think using that tool is another economic tool in the toolbox to get somebody to go into that area and build and provide jobs. And I'm sure that there are people with different opinions about that. I'm okay with that.
I actually agree with you 100%, Jill. TIFs are a useful tool in the toolbox. They are being abused.
I'll just a short comment. 40 years ago, I did a TIF in downtown Springfield, Illinois. We would not have a downtown Springfield, Illinois today were it not for that TIF. It was used effectively. But as Senator Schupp indicated, it's been misused because developers have been allowed to run roughshod over the communities. Mm-hmm. And TIFs can be a very effective planning tool, but the tail is wagging the dog. And we do have a serious problem with a lack of planning in our communities throughout the state. And that's why we have this dislocation that we got all the affordable housing in places where the people who live there can't get to work, can't get to schools, can't get to healthcare, I mean, our planning process is just completely upside down. And TIF has been a part of the problem, can be a part of the solution, because you don't have to give the developer any money. But what you can do is exercise, dirty word, but necessary evil, eminent domain when necessary to move the overall good for the community forward.
Thank you. And you know what, one more thing I didn't say about TIFs for those who don't know them, some of the rationale for the TIF is that if that developer didn't come in and build that new building and create those jobs, that tax base that the school district and the other taxing districts would be getting from that new development, they wouldn't be getting anyway because it wouldn't occur. So again, I think as Don said, and as Doug said, I think it's appropriate in some places. Let's use these tools well. And, we have to, elected officials have to know when to say, no, that is not an appropriate use.
Okay.
Additional questions? I was going to tell you then.
Yeah, there's a question about redistricting. If you can maybe talk a little bit about the process and the timeline.
Yeah, well, the timeline has been shifted dramatically because we won't have our census data in now until September, October. So everything is going to, that's my understanding. And so I have to get the census data in before the before the redistricting commission can meet and make decisions. I think that, from my perspective, one of the big areas now but always important is the congressional redistricting. And we have 8 districts. The second district where I just ran and, came in second was, I don't think it is, I'm concerned about that district because it is the one place in the state. We have Kansas City and St. Louis City that are going to be Democratic. The second congressional district was the one place where we had an opportunity to have a truly competitive election. And I'm concerned that it's going to be drawn in a way that eliminates that possibility. So I don't know what to say other than that. You know, we're going to have to be paying attention, and we're going to have to be doing what we can and providing whatever insights and information we can to, is anybody here know? I don't even know if they have reached out to start to appoint people on those commissions. Doug, do you know?
I've heard some buzz that they're starting to reach out to appoint people on those commissions. But the September pushback for the census numbers coming to the states means that the timeline gets really stretched. Yeah. So those of us who might be running for re-election would be needing to file in February. That possibility might not exist because we might not have districts to file in at that point. We may have to take open filings and see if we're running against one another. It's going to be a bigger pushback than it was. What it was, 2012 was the bad year. Yeah, it seems to be getting worse every cycle we do, doesn't it? But here we are at the next go around, and we're probably going to be waiting longer than 2012 to see how the districts wind up and who's going to be able to run where, because we can't actually do a thing until we officially receive those numbers.
I think Nancy Copenhaver might have some insight.
Well, the League of Women Voters has been very much working on this issue. And this coming Sunday at 4 p.m., we're going to have a Zoom call about the redistricting process. And yeah, we know we're way far away from it, but we're going to start talking about what you need to do to prepare for, and what if you want to be involved with it, and all of that kind of thing. So if anybody is interested in that, check out the League of Women Voters of Missouri website. That ought to have the connection to that, or you can email me about that, and I'll make sure that you get hooked into that. 4 o'clock this coming Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, Nancy. That's great. Any more questions in the chat that you see, Harvey?
I think we covered them all. If not, folks are welcome to unmute themselves and jump in. While we're giving folks a chance to do that, I had heard that there are some legislators in St. Charles that want to make St. Charles, all of St. Charles, inside of congressional districts within St. Charles, which would mean taking away a piece of St. Charles from the 2nd Congressional. That piece is a very conservative piece, or a very Republican voting piece of the district. Should we all be advocating, yeah, let's take that and give it to St. Charles, let them have it?
I actually heard the opposite, that they want all of St. Charles within the 2nd Congressional District. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Ann would love that. That's how Ann could get locked in forever, is if they take any more of St. Charles.
That happens that there are some St. Charles legislators who would be challenging her on the Republican side.
Ah, okay.
And you know what? Not senators, not people that would that would make me happy serving in Congress. So.
Who knows? Maybe it'll divide the vote a little bit.
Right. Well, I do think that there are going to be some fights in the 2nd Congressional District to see where we land.
Interesting. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Hearing none, I'd like to open the floor up for announcements. We had that one announcement about the League of Women Voters on Sunday, a Zoom, so you can go to their website. Anyone else have any events that they would like to announce at this time?
This is Florence. I don't have an event, but I would just like to announce that Creve Coeur Township is in the process of collecting their membership dues. And I did send some letters out earlier in the year, this year. So if you have not sent that little form back in to me, to the post office box that we have, I certainly would appreciate it, because we use those funds to help with the legislators who are running for office. If you would just do that for us, please, we certainly would like that. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
This is also not an event, but my name's Alan Harris Dalt, and I have been working with Harvey a lot lately to try and get the Maryland Heights Township Democrats social media presence up and running. So we have a Twitter account now, we've got our Facebook going again. And so I just want to invite all of you, especially the Maryland Heights folks, but of course it's open to anybody, to connect with us if you're on those platforms. You know, my goals for our social media are obviously to share information about the meetings we're having, to amplify partners that we have, whether they're officially Democratic, like our legislators that we've had here tonight, or the Missouri Democratic Party, or groups that are maybe a little bit off the Democratic path, but still groups that we connect with, like Indivisible or Mom's Demand, I see in the chat there, and create a platform for outreach and connection too. So a way for us to know about these legislative issues. I'm one of the folks who are on that Monday night DLN call with the House Democrats. So I make sure to post information in our social media channels throughout the week. I'd also like to get to know folks. I'm pretty new to the group, and so I'm going to put my email in the chat, but I'd love to, not necessarily in person right now, but when we get there, absolutely meet up and grab a coffee or a juice and talk, or we can set up a Zoom to chat now. But I like people, and I want to get to know the folks who are in the group already, and know what you care about, and know what you're interested in, what got you to the point that you want to spend some time talking about this kind of stuff with everybody. And I know why I'm here, but I don't know why you're here, and I would love to find out. So yeah, again, I'm Alan, and I'm happy to see you all. Been around for a little while, but yeah, I would encourage you to connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks.
And thank you, Alan. Alan has been incredibly helpful in social media for our club and some other planning conversations that we've had. A very good addition to our club, and once again, thank you for all you do. Did I hear someone else in there with an announcement?
I'd like to invite everyone to join us at Chesterfield Township Democrats. I'm the membership chairperson. I'm Kathy Merrick, but we have, our website is chesterfielddemocrats.org, but our virtual monthly meetings are on Tuesday, second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. The next one on March the 9th. And in the next few months, we are focusing on how Democrats can rebuild, how we can learn to reach out to areas that have not been traditionally Democrat. And we are building our efforts in that direction. We had Holly Reagan from River Rat Democrats last month, and we will have Elad Gross, who has a great grassroots effort called Take Back Missouri, and coming on March the 9th. And we'd like to invite all of you to join us at our meetings, and check out, we have a Facebook account as well as chesterfielddemocrats.org. You'll see lots of invitations there for our meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Very good group. I've been to a lot of the meetings in person and on Zoom. Very well run. Any other announcements?
Harvey, if I could real quick, I forgot to tell you guys earlier, you can stream committee hearings from the Senate and the House by going online. And if you have questions about that, let me know. But if you are interested in a hearing and wanna watch it for yourself, please, or listen to it for yourself, please let me know, and we'll help you. We'll show you how to go on house.mo.gov or senate.mo.gov and access that information. And I just also want to say thank you. It's so good to see so many 3 pages of friendly faces, people that I know and miss. So thank you, Harvey and Florence, and all of you.
Very good. Thank you. Florence, you have any closing words?
No, it's a very good discussion tonight. We look forward to hearing you all again. And thanks for everyone who attended tonight. This was truly wonderful, despite the climate outside. We like being inside. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks again. Thank you to everybody. With that, we'll conclude our meeting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.